if you think about it, if you go to a restaurant and, we've all been to a restaurant where the server, I still say waiter and waitress, but I know server is the right word now, but your server is miserable. They hate their job. And maybe they're a little rude, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally. And they're just, you just kind of get the feeling like, I don't like, not a fan of the server. If I don't like onions. My wife really doesn't like onions. I don't like onions, right? So if I order a burger with no onions and they bring out a burger with no onions, and if that server was awesome and they were like, I could tell they love their job. They were really nice, very personable. They took some time, a little extra time, maybe called me sweetie, right? Or whatever, right? Yep. And that burger comes, they screw up my order and I get onions on my burger. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to pick them off.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to eat my burger and I'm going to enjoy it. I'm just going to take the onions, kick them aside. But if that server was a complete, what, I'm sending the burger back.
Yeah.
At the risk of now probably having them do something nasty to my burger, but I'm sending it back. So think about that. If you take the time to build the relationship the right way and really connect those dots and go a little deeper and spend the time with the customer, even after you made the sale, the cool down period where you continue the relationship, maybe some follow-up calls. When that job goes sideways, and I'm going to say when, not if, because jobs go sideways. When that job goes sideways, the only thing that's going to save you is the customer giving you some grace.
Yeah.
And the only way they're going to give you that grace is if you spent the time to build that relationship. And nobody thinks about that.
Please welcome America's service sales coach, Joe Crisara.
Welcome to the Service MVP Podcast, the show that helps home service professionals master high-value sales, build stronger client relationships, and grow their business like never before. Join industry experts as they share real strategies that drive results. If you're ready to level up your service game, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
It's the Service MVP Podcast.
Thank you for listening and watching the Service MVP Podcast. I want to give you a copy of my free book. Just click on the link below in the description and one will be sent to you from me personally. Thank you so much for listening.
Welcome to the Service MVP Podcast. My name is Joe Crisara, America's service sales coach, and we have with us a very special guest. His name is Dale Steele, who is a solution specialist or quote unquote salesperson in the HVAC industry who has achieved some great results. Dale, welcome to our program, and thanks for being willing to share some of your knowledge with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Well, although I know, it's always funny that the people who are the most successful, like you'd never know if you could be sitting right next to that person and they'll be the last one to tell you that I'm successful. Dale, why don't you start by telling us how the journey to success started for you and how you first got into, or how you first fell in love with the service business first, and a little bit about the journey you took.
Yeah, so I like to say I Forrest Gumped my way into the business. I mean, it wasn't really my idea. I needed a job. I had a previous life as a musician, and that ran its course, and I needed a job, and I had a friend who worked in a contact center, call center for a small air conditioning business in Phoenix, and I went in and applied, and the guy, I hit it off with the manager, and at the end of the interview, he said, "Hey, I just don't have anything for you." And I said, "All right." So I walked out to my car. I was getting in my car, and I was, I wasn't really dejected because it was just a, entry level job. But I was like, okay, whatever. So I got in the car and I was backing out of the spot in my little Geo Metro that didn't have a hood. I had a car with no hood. And spider web cracked windshield backing out of my spot. By the way, it's $600 car. So just to let you know, like where I came from, right?
And for sure. Yeah.
I didn't have a family like buying me new cars and paying my rent or anything. I had to figure it out. So I'm backing out of this spot, and all of a sudden the call center manager is at my my window,
Mhm.
knocking at the window and says, hey, you know what? You seem like a really good guy. Just come in tomorrow and I'll find something for you. So I started out in the industry, $7 an hour, 30 hours a week. This is like uh 2006 or something, 2007. And $7 an hour, 30 hours a week. I got outbound dialing back when you could cold call, calling some lists, a little bit of dialer, a little bit of customer base. And if a call would actually run, I would get a spiff. So, I mean, $210 a week.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
It's funny because
And
we do share some things there. It's like I don't want to one up you, but I started out at 675 an hour, so it's like, of course, I probably have just a few years on you. I'm not sure, but and I'm also a musician. I also played bass guitar in many different kinds of bands and stuff like that back in the. What instrument did you play?
I was a singer.
Singer. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I also did. I was a wedding singer for like 10 years. I also did
Nice.
rock bands, stuff like that. So funny. Well, great on that. Well, definitely, we share some of those passions together there. I want everybody to come to the next Total Immersion, the life-changing event where you increase your sales and your personal growth. What should we do? Let's talk about some of the things. So Dale has had some fantastic results. You may have heard people talk about him. He's not widely known. I looked up and see how many podcasts he doesn't do a lot of podcasts. So this is definitely a new. You're not going to see. You search Joe Crisara and all you're going to see is podcasts everywhere. You search
That's
Dale.
intentional too for me. I mean, I've just, always felt like I had work to do. Not that this is work for
Yeah, I get it.
in business, but I just was, I was always more concerned with the task at hand and to me this for years, this I kind of viewed as these kinds of things more of as distractions for me. But
Mhm.
now I'm starting to dip my toes into this. So this is actually really enjoyable for me.
Well, it can be a distraction too, and it turns into its own like full-time thing. So definitely keep your boundaries. You're
Yeah,
definitely
exactly.
definitely going to need those. Some of the passions that I do realize we share together are, I always say that people are more important than things when you're doing service. And I think we also share that passion too. Tell us a little bit about how somebody from those humble beginnings, making $7 an hour with a cracked windshield and all that,
Yeah.
it still took your focus and we're optimistic enough to stick with people. Because I think a lot of times when you're going through that kind of distress in your life, you can lose faith in other people. Tell us how you maintain that optimism and also the ability to connect with people like you do, Dale. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I got into that call center outbound dialing, and I always took it as, even before that, I had a short stint as a bill collector,
Mm,
and I've sat in a call center with all these bill collectors, right? And we were collecting past due mortgages in mobile home parks.
nice.
So these aren't just people that are missing their mortgage, and I'm not judging.
Hmm.
There's some nice mobile home parks,
Yes, yes, there is.
but I'll tell you, it's like these are people that can't, just for context, right? These are people that can't afford their $200 a month mobile home mortgage. So
Hmm.
these are people that are just, they're the stories. Like when you can't make a sale, when you struggle to make a sale, customers pull out every excuse or we'll call it reason why they can't
Yeah,
make the
yeah.
purchase.
Hmm.
Well, now you get people that can't make their mortgage, their $200 mortgage, and they're giving you the reasons, and it's like, you're hearing amputations, you're hearing, you know, just human tragedy every day.
Hmm.
And then I was sitting around these other collectors that are just coming in as hammers. They're just hammering on these people. And, I get it. That's your job, is to get the money. But I figured out really quick that it's like, I'm going to just be nice.
Mm,
I'm just going to come in and say, hey, I'd like to, I'm the reason I'm calling is I want to help you make an arrangement to get back on track. And I was
Mm,
the only person of 100 collectors in this room that was saying that. I figured out my own little thing, and
yeah.
immediately I became the number one collector in the company. And so that was kind of my first maybe light bulb moment, right? Where I was like, you just come in like with a helpful heart, like trying to like actually help somebody. Um, it's so much easier. It causes people to, lower their guard and want to listen, and so and then when I, got in the HVAC business in that call center, there again, I was just trying to help. And shortly after I was pretty successful in the contact center, what they considered to be successful. And so they were like, "Hey, you want to get in a truck?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know anything about air conditioning." And, you know, and I got in a truck and they taught me a little bit about maintenance. I was never a service technician. I was the maintenance guy. I'd come out and change your filters, check your capacitors, and
Mhm.
if the system was in bad condition, I'd call my service manager and say, "What should I do?" And he'd say, "Tell them they need a new unit," or we'll have somebody come out and fix it or whatever, because I wasn't a big
Mhm.
fix it guy.
Yeah, yeah.
And but I just fit, because I didn't know anything really substantial about air conditioning. I was just the guy who was like I said, cleaning coils, changing filters, maybe changing capacitors, checking everything, taking readings. Didn't really understand the readings that much, but I'd call somebody who did. They'd walk me through it. I figured out really quick that all I really had, because I wasn't technical, so all I really had was the ability to, you know, connect with people. And I was always a pretty good connector. I was always pretty social, maybe forced. What do they say? There's extroverts, but forced extrovert.
Mhm, mhm.
I forced myself to be extrovert.
Well,
I'm
yeah, what I'm hearing there, Dale, is a couple of things that I really want you to ask you if you to expand on a little bit there, is the importance of seeing problems from the other person's point of view, which it sounds like with that collection job and even with your sales job, and I would assume also with the ability now, that's got to be one of your superpowers. I would say is to view the problem through have the other person's eyes and uh, to be naturally empathetic uh,
yeah.
is something that's an important aspect. Could you expand on that a little bit? Because that sounds like really, it's so hard because we're all kind of like junior narcissists, always
Yeah.
worrying about ourselves, right? You
Yeah.
have to release that and worry about the other people. Tell us about that more, Dale.
Yeah, so while you were saying that, before you said the word empathy, I Googled the word empathy for the actual definition, and it
Uh,
says the ability to understand and share the feelings of another.
there you go. Yeah, that's
So, in the world today, right? Even all the crazy things going on, I really try to understand why people feel the way they feel. Even if I'm talking about politics, if I'm talking about whatever, I try to understand, why does this person, what's going on in this person? What's their life experiences that's led them to feel the way that they feel. So even in those really, potentially conflict situations, I try to show that, I try to feel that. But then also with customers, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to a customer's house and, you know, they woke up this morning, because I was an air conditioning sales guy,
Mhm.
sold some plumbing
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
but primarily air conditioning. You know, Nobody wakes up in the morning thinking, if you're going on a maintenance or a demand call, y- maybe not so much on a demand call, but when you're a maintenance tech like I was, not the fix
Mhm,
it guy, not going to diagnose a, a broken anything.
mhm,
I'm dealing with customers that woke up today thinking my system's working. So, I'm just having a checkup. And then I come out and I find this and I find that, and I go show them this and show them that. And, if my agenda is just, I'm going to sell something, I'm just going to be a hammer. So I have
mhm.
to understand that, hey, this customer wasn't expecting this. I have to, be able to show them obviously the value, the issue, the consequence of not taking care of it, and then, the ultimately the resolution. But it all starts with like building a relationship. I mean, If you go so many, when you get out on a call on a maintenance call or demand call or any type of sales call, the first thing that happens is the customer, you're there for the thing, right? You're there for I call it the what.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
there
yeah.
for the what. And that's the
Machine.
air conditioner, that's the water heater, that's the windows, that's whatever, the roof, whatever you're there for. And the customer, the customer is going to want to take you right to that thing. And maybe if you're super techie, if you're really into the actual roof or the real, your gut instinct might be to go right to that thing. And, if you do that, you're kind of blowing it. I ran a call a few months ago with a guy and, we walked in the door and the customer said, here, let me take you to the problem. And I was just riding along. Right. And so I just keep my mouth shut when I'm riding along with anybody. I just keep my mouth shut. And this was a restoration company. And the guy took the customer's like, hey, come to the sink. Right. And as we were walking through the house, there was a wall and there was probably 100 pictures on the wall. But here's the thing. It was 100 pictures of one person.
Mm,
And
interesting.
it was a girl, right? From baby picture all the way to, high school graduation or whatever, and we just walked right by that wall. Didn't say anything. And, I'm dying inside. I'm like, oh my God, how are you not stopping and talking about this wall,
Right,
right?
right.
But he didn't do that. He went right to the thing. Customer took him to the thing. And, and so to me, it's, you're going to get to the what. You're there for the sink. You're there for the air conditioner. If you didn't at some point get to that thing, you wouldn't even have a job. You got to look at the air conditioner if you're there but
Right.
before it's inevitable that you're going to get to that. What's not inevitable is that you're going to take the time and build the relationship with the customer that's going to lead to the success. So for me, it's like 80%. I don't know what the percentage is, but I'd say 80%. I'm trying to like connect with the customer and build value in the company and try to relate to them and try to understand what's making them tick.
Yeah, I would say that the emotional contribution we provide our client is really the only true differentiator that can elevate us above other competitors. And so you would say that on the journey to the thing or the problem that people are having with the equipment or mechanical item, the journey has to have an exit ramp to Peopleville to kind of like let's make sure we do that first before you know who I am and who you are. Is that kind of the message you're trying to send us, there, Dale?
Yeah, and by the way, the guy still made the sale because he was a good he did his job. He still made that sale on that restoration job. But I would have stopped right there, and focused on that. But yeah, I mean, another thing too, it's like what you said about the off ramp to get to the sales part. A lot of guys, for instance, I'm a dog lover, right? And I don't know, I've asked people before what percentage of customers have dogs, and they're like 90, 95, and it might only be 50, but it
Yeah.
feels like everybody's got a dog, right? It feels like everybody's a dog lover, even though they're not. But and so, if I get on a call, I'm hanging out with the dog, right? I'm on the floor with the dog, I'm playing with the dog, playing fetch, whatever. Not, I because I love dogs, but also, I mean, I know that that's a great way to meld with the customer. But here's the thing is that some guys, some salespeople, I should say salespeople because there's ladies too, but some salespeople, they spend a half hour playing with the dog and all they know is what the dog likes, where the dog likes to get scratched, and what the dog's favorite toy is. They don't know anything about they just focused on the dog. So it's like, yeah, you're playing with the dog, but while you're playing with the dog, you're talking to the customer and you're finding about this and you're finding about that. And it's definitely, there's a method to it, and
Yeah.
for a lot of people, for a lot of us, It's natural.
Yeah, it's
It's
like,
not contrived.
you're petting the dog and saying, "How'd you guys wind up getting and moving to this neighborhood? You guys from the area? Where'd you guys grow up?" And things like those kind of things about the who found the problem here, by the way. Who's the one who
Yeah.
called the company or whatever. So, those kind of things about, I do agree. That's why I say people, I say, you know what? I don't know what's going to happen on every call. I have no idea actually what's going to happen, but I do know I am going to give my unconditional friendship to people and respect and care and support. Those are things that I just know I'm going to do. You share a similar mindset there, Dale. That I don't know I don't know what's going to happen, but I do know here's what I'm going to do. You feel that way too?
Yeah, absolutely. 10 years, I haven't sold anything, in probably 7 years, because I've got into sales leadership. But, I'm still telling the same stories about, when I get home from work at the end of the day, I would tell my wife, Betsy, about, how much she'd maybe say, how much did you sell? Or, I'd say, oh, I sold this or I sold that.
Yeah,
But then
yeah.
I would end up ultimately talking about the people, the
Mhm.
relationships. And
That's
I'm
it.
still telling stories about relationships that I made, 10 years, 8 years ago, 15 years ago.
Hmm.
That, I went to one call, and this is just something, just a quick story. It's like I went to a call and I walked in the door, and, they have the little table with the bowl where they put the keys, right? Where they put their
Hmm.
keys.
Hmm.
And above that table was a rack on the wall with a bunch of coffee cups. And so I look at the coffee cups, and, I'm like, right away I zeroed in on one. I said, Tecumseh Motors. I don't know if you know what that is. It's a
Yeah, yeah,
company that
totally.
makes,
That's it.
makes
I used to,
compressors for lawnmowers. And
I used to have a mini bike we had. Every
right,
mini bike I had, it's a come see.
Tecumseh. And so I go, Tecumseh. And the guy said, and this is in Mesa. I'm from Wisconsin, right?
Hmm.
This is in Mesa, Arizona, 2,400 miles from Wisconsin. And
Hmm.
the guy goes, what do you know about Tecumseh? And I said, well, my uncle used to work for Tecumseh in West Bend, Wisconsin. And he goes, I used to work for Tecumseh in West Bend, Wisconsin. I go, wow. He goes, what's your uncle's name? And I said, Doug Steele. And the guy said, Dougie?
That's
And
funny.
then a minute, then he goes in the other room, comes back with a high school yearbook, the 1958 yearbook or 1960 yearbook from Slinger High School in
Mhm.
Wisconsin, and Will opens it up, and there he is, and there's my uncle on the same page. Now I'm still telling that story,
Mhm.
10 years, 15, I think that was 15 years ago. I'm still telling that story. I'm not telling that story because I made a $700 commission or 1,000 or
Yeah,
50. I don't
yeah.
even know what I sold. I think it was a package unit. I
Mhm.
probably made a few bucks on it, but I'm not talking about the money that I made on that deal. I'm telling that story to because if I hadn't made that connection, don't get me wrong, I was still going to make that sale. Because if I hadn't noticed that coffee cup, I would have talked to him about something else. I
Mhm.
was gonna, but if I hadn't paid attention and focused on that customer first,
Mhm.
I wouldn't have this awesome story. And
Yeah.
now today, I tell that story. I think about my uncle. I think about, and it's like it was such a cool story. And then the guy was like, "Yeah, I tried to buy your uncle's Mustang 2 years ago." And then I call my uncle. I'm like, who I hadn't talked to in a minute, and he's like,
Uh-huh.
oh yeah, I know that guy. And so it's just such a crazy story. And to me, those connections, when you're focused on the people, you'll make connect. That's a pretty extreme one, but you'll
Yeah, yeah.
make connections l- like that every week. There'll
Mm.
be some connection. I believe that if you talk to somebody long enough, you'll figure out that you have you'll for sure figure out that you have a mutual interest. But if you talk longer, you'll find out that you have mutual acquaintances. And then I just love that because I'm a people person. But from a sales standpoint, once you start making those types of connections, it's I think it becomes more likely with each connection that you make. If you make a connection, with a customer, don't stop there. Make another one. Keep connecting more dots. And the more of those dots that you connect, the more likely it is that you're going to make a sale and you're going to make money, which is ultimately why you're at the call. That's why you even have your job. And it's okay. It's okay to use one to lead to another. It's how it works.
It's an investment. It's a personal investment we make in other people that I think gives us the ability to manage the project better. Because if you find a way to care for other people, then you're going to make sure we get this job done right. The quality of the work we do, the quality of the solutions become better, and that this is again the differentiating point. Nobody ever would have that experience with cousin Uncle Doug and those people. And by the way, you and I are connected too, because here we go. We're both in the music industry in the band. We both got involved with sales. I was like $6.75 an hour in a call center too. It's like, man, you're like living. And then I grew up in just south of the Illinois border in like Gurnee, Illinois, and
Okay.
so you're just like right north of me there. You were just in the Midwest, and I wound up moving out here too. So it's so many different the Midwest that I can always tell somebody I know is like probably from the Midwest because they just are nice, And when I go to different places in the country, it's like, you're not from this area, are you? I'm like, no, I'm from Midwest. He goes, I figured that.
The
So
biggest difference between us is that I've never had that much hair in my entire life.
oh, it could be, yeah, but you know what?
I've never had that had hair.
That's
You
just
know, one
it's just the cosmetic change. That's all.
one thing that you mentioned, about managing a project, and I've never really I thought about this I don't know, maybe a couple months ago that,
Mhm.
you know, if you think about it, if you go to a restaurant and, we've all been to a restaurant where the server, I still say waiter and waitress, but I know server is the right word now, but your server is miserable. They
Yeah.
hate their job. And maybe they're a little rude, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally. And they're just, you just kind of get the feeling like, I don't like, not a fan of the server.
Mhm.
If I don't like onions. My wife really doesn't like onions. I don't like onions, right? So if I order a burger with no onions and they bring out a burger with no onions, and if that server was awesome and they were like, I could tell they love their job. They were really nice, very personable. They took some time, a little extra time, maybe called me sweetie, right?
Mhm.
Or whatever, right?
Yep.
And then that burger comes, they screw up my order and I get onions on my burger. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to pick them off.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything.
Mhm.
I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to eat my burger and I'm going to enjoy it. I'm just going to take the onions, kick them aside. But if that server was a complete, what,
Mhm.
I'm sending the burger back.
Yeah, yeah.
At the risk of now probably having them do something nasty to my burger, but I'm sending it back. So think about that. If you take the time to build the relationship the right way and really connect those dots and go a little deeper and spend the time with the customer, even after you made the sale, the cool down period where you continue the relationship, maybe some follow-up calls. When that job goes sideways, and I'm going to say when, not if, because jobs go sideways. When that job goes sideways, the only thing that's going to save you is the customer giving you some grace.
Yeah.
And the only way they're going to give you that grace is if you spent the time to build that relationship. And nobody thinks about that, because when you sell lots of jobs like I did and like a lot of us have, we have lots of jobs go sideways. And if you
Mhm.
look at it, can look in if you look at yourself and you say, what, I had lots of jobs go sideways.
Mhm.
Because you got to remember, I'm not a technical guy
Yep.
and I sold tons of jobs. So there's going to be jobs that go bad. I had very few, I never had complaints, really. I'll say never for this conversation. I never had complaints
Yeah.
because I had this awesome relationship with the customer that had my direct line and they'd call me and then I'd freaking handle it.
Mhm.
But there were guys that sold, a tenth of what I sold. And every time they'd sell a job, not every time, but when their jobs went sideways, it was like, in the frickin' news. It wasn't in the
It's
news.
like a dumpster fire. I
It
get
wasn't in the news, but it was like
it. It's a dumpster fire.
Yelp,
Like
Google
everybody would.
reviews,
Yeah,
frickin' blowing up, finding the CEO's frickin', email address and, complete dumpster fire. Mine were always like, hey, we'll handle it. We'll just call Dale. He'll handle it. So
He'll take
think
care.
about that,
Dale's gonna take care of me.
Yeah. And so that's just another thing that people don't really think about.
Yeah. Well, good. Thanks for giving us that information to think about. It's really great. I do want to just before we end this, I definitely want to touch base on the. This is important. I agree with that. I mean, we could just do. You and I could start the Dale and Joe People Institute, where
Yeah.
we just start a new business focusing on how you connect with people. I think we would. I think together we would be a great dynamic duo there. But there comes a time when you're doing your job like you do, and like I do too, is we got to get down to business now, right? It's like,
Yeah.
and then there's that. Tell us how, because some salespeople, I think one of the fatal mistakes they make is they do all the stuff. They connect with people, they
Yeah.
talk about the pictures and all that stuff, and then they turn into a different person when it gets down to the business part. They lose that they leave that connection into a different closet, and they don't bring the people what they've learned into the problems and the solutions that you're expressing. Tell us about how you bridge that gap, Dale, a little bit, if you don't mind, about how does that relationship play into your ability to become persuasive to get the solutions, get the job, to make sure you can manage the project.
Yeah. So if you've built a relationship, there's so many ways to. It's such a big, broad,
It is.
question, right?
Yeah.
I look at it like this: that the better relationship you build with the customer. They always you hear things like, I've heard people say like, there's been things written where you should ask for the job not 9 times, 5 no's, 9 no's. Customers, I've talked to sales guys that are like, I get 5 no's, before I walk away. Well, I look at it like, if you haven't built a relationship with the customer, it's like no. If they say no one time and you haven't built a relationship, you better just take your freaking iPad or your notepad or your tool bag and leave. Because if you ask for the sale more than once without investing in that customer on a personal level, you're going to come off as pushy. If I'm a pretty passionate person, right? The way that we're talking right now, this is the way, I just met you for the first time last week. Was it last week?
Last week, yeah.
Yeah. And we were talking like this in 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the way I talk to everyone, whether it's I'm on a sales call, I'm wherever,
Yeah.
and so I'm passionate when I speak, and I speak with this, probably very similar cadence, cadence, tone, pretty direct. If I'm talking about whether I'm playing with the dog, whether I'm talking about the football game. So I don't really have to, I can only speak to myself. I don't really have to ratchet up my intensity as a person or my personality to make a sale. I just build a great relationship, and then offer the options, give them their options, right? If you're, whether you're selling a water heater, a roof, windows, an air conditioner, if you're not giving multiple options, you're blowing it. I'll say that, because you
That's
want
good.
to always do a good, better, best of some type.
It's a service that's one of the services, is to create all those choices.
Yep.
So that if you're concerned about people, you'd be concerned about, I don't know, I know who the people are, but I'm not sure how they're going to buy.
Yep.
Let's create a different way they can so you have different avenues they can purchase, because
Yep.
that is part of what differentiates some people, because some people don't bother to write those things down. Make sense, Dale?
Yeah. And, you get your good, better, best. And, in most cases, I think that most companies have those pre-built. So you're not having to build out your good, better, best. It's probably already built. You're probably in Service Titan if you're an HVAC person, and it's just pre-built in a price book.
Mhm.
You give those options. And then, I know that your thing is, what's your line? What should we do?
It's right there. Yeah.
What should we do? Yeah. Mine was always, which one do you like?
Yeah. It's there. Yeah. You get
Which
there.
one do you, well, I wouldn't even say which one do you like. I'd say which one, I'd make it even less invasive. I'd say,
Mhm.
which one do you think you like? And they'd
Yeah.
say, well, we like 2 or 3. And I'd say, okay, well, let's look at 2 or 3. Let's talk about 2 or 3. Your difference is this. And and then when they were like, yeah, the 3 probably makes more sense. I'd say, okay, is that the one that you want? Yep. Okay, done. Then I would say, asking for financing. If they're financing, I would say, okay, one of my closing lines was, okay, I just need your driver's license.
There you go. Okay,
And if they hand over their driver's license, then I know I'm running financing.
we're moving. We're
and,
moving forward.
and we're
Right?
good. But yeah, it's, but that's a great question, because it's like, don't become this different person. If you become a different person, once it gets down to business, that's off-putting, right?
It always shows bad character. Like, I
Yeah.
see. He's nice when he's trying to, and then he goes into this. He's a hard
Yeah.
ass, right? And by the way, I always say my second one after what should we do is like, which one is your favorite?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
say which one's your favorite then? What should we do? I'm not sure. Well, which one's your favorite? Well, I like that third option. What do you like about that one? That's surprising. You like that one? And so let them talk about it and own it. And
Yep.
like that's it. Wow, Dale, I could talk to you for hours, literally. And I think at Pantheon, I every time I never met you before. Then all of Pantheon was every day. Oh, there's Dale again. It's like,
Yeah. It's so awkward, because you're like, the first day it's, hey, yeah, let's connect sometime. Well, let's talk next week. And then and then you're like, okay, and you do this big goodbye.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then 10 minutes later, it's like, oh, there's
we're
Joe
back
again.
again.
Hey, Joe. Then it's like, and then it becomes, all right, see you in 5 minutes.
Well,
'Cause you,
Dale, if you believe in a higher power like I do, I believe in a higher power. I
yeah,
put it that way. Sometimes the higher power is telling us to get together and talk. I think that was destined. And tell you what, one of the easiest things I ever did was make a friendship with you.
yeah.
I think we both gave that to each other unconditionally. Is there any final words you want to say while we wrap this up? This is about a wrap up here. I mean, people could listen to this for hours, but what's a wrap up here for
I'll
you?
say this. I know lots of really good salespeople. I've worked with some people. I would never claim that I was the best at anything.
Mhm.
I know lots of good salespeople. And what I found is that some of them just didn't want to work that hard, which is understandable. They have they have different, I don't have kids. I didn't have a family, right? I got my wife and my dog. That's my family. But I didn't have kids, and I had to get home and run around and, take them to sports and stuff like that. So I put more into this
Mhm.
than most. And, I know a friend of mine, a guy I know, Greg Jamrose, out in Southern California. He's selling, 12, $14 million a year.
Mhm.
And he's a really good sales guy. Is he the best in the world? I don't even, no, he's not. I wasn't, no one is. I don't even know what the best in the world, what does that even mean? But the guys or the gals, the people that are the most successful are the ones that are training the hardest and working the hardest. Ken Goodrich, one of my mentors, very close friend, he told me that he felt that I approached sales like a professional athlete. And so, and that one, I took that as a great compliment. Now, he knew I was a big sports fan, so he knew that was probably going to really resonate with me. He knows that about me. But, that was the greatest compliment. I think that, it's because I looked at it. I looked at the statistics. I looked at the closing rates. I took accountability when I didn't make a sale. I looked in the mirror, right, and was like, okay, what did I do wrong? I left jobs, and I'd be driving down the road thinking, man, what did I not do? And then I'd realize I didn't even ask for the freaking sale.
Mhm.
I turn
Mhm.
around, go back to the house and say, hey, I've totally forgot. Is this what you want to do? And they're like, yeah, we're wondering why you didn't ask us if we want, so I, I'll say this, that I outworked some people. And that's
Mhm.
probably why I'm sitting on this call with you, is
Yeah, yeah.
because I outworked some people.
Well, I still have that philosophy, Dale. I have two things. I'm a huge sports fan too, but let's not get into the teams right now because we can go on for 30 minutes about that.
Who's your
But
team?
well, I'm not going to talk about it because
Okay.
I don't want to have a possible disagreement.
Okay.
Well, but that's one we can have at the bar or whatever. We could talk
Yeah.
about that. But another thing I always say too is that, you know what, I may fail in this business, but I'm going to be the hardest working MFer who ever failed. I tell you
Yeah.
that. That's why I put it there too. Dale, thank you so much for being gracious enough to share so much with everybody. And again, I think everybody, gets the image of like guys like Rick Picard or me or you that were, man, they must be real hard asses. But honestly, they're like the most comfortable people to be around. The best salespeople allow people to sell themselves. And I think you've done that here today on this podcast, Dale. Thank you for letting us all sell ourselves on having a relationship with you and what you represent. Thanks, Dale. I appreciate you.
Thank you for listening and watching the Service MVP podcast. I want to give you a copy of my free book. Just click on the link below in the description, and one will be sent to you from me personally. Thank you so much for listening.